I always thought the silence after the funeral would be the thing that broke me, but it was the sound of a key turning in a lock that wasn't mine anymore. 20 minutes after we buried Mom and Dad, my sister didn't hand me a tissue. She handed me an eviction notice disguised as a new will. She told me it was for the best. 5 years later, I finally learned exactly whose best she was talking about. The dirt was still loose on the graves when I realized that grief was not the only thing waiting for me in the parking lot of the Eternal Rest Memorial Park. It was a humid Tuesday in mid-July, the kind of heat that made your dress stick to your back and turned the air into a physical weight. I stood by the open door of my rental car, watching the last of the mourners drift away toward their vehicles. They moved like ghosts in black polyester, their voices low, murmuring platitudes that I had already forgotten. I felt hollowed out. It was a physical sensation, as if someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything vital, leaving only a trembling shell. My mother and father were gone, both of them, gone within 48 hours of each other. A double pneumonia that turned into a systemic failure that the doctors explained with charts and grim nods, but which I understood simply as the end of my world. My guilt was a loud, buzzing fly in my ear. It was irrational. I knew that. I told myself it was irrational. But the thought kept looping. I had missed a voicemail from my mother 3 days before she went into the hospital. I had been busy at work, buried under a deadline for a marketing campaign that now seemed so trivial I wanted to scream. She had just wanted to ask about a recipe for pot roast. I had thought, I will call her back on the weekend. There was no weekend. There was only the hospital, the beeping machines, and the silence. I looked across the parking lot and saw my sister, Lydia. She was standing by the hearse, speaking to the funeral director. She looked impeccable. Her black dress was tailored, her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon, and her sunglasses were dark enough to hide her eyes completely. She was nodding, pointing at a clipboard, managing the logistics of our parents' death with the same terrifying efficiency she applied to her job as a logistics manager, while I had spent the service weeping into a handful of shredded tissues, unable to stand up without swaying. Lydia had been a pillar of marble. She had greeted every cousin, thanked every neighbor, and directed the flow of traffic into the reception hall. She performed competence so well that it made my grief feel messy and indulgent. She saw me watching her. She said something to the director, who nodded and walked away. Then she turned and marched toward me. The gravel crunched under her heels with a rhythmic, purposeful sound. "Scarlett," she said. Her voice was steady. It was not the voice of a grieving daughter. It was the voice of a woman closing a deal. "We need to talk, before everyone heads to the reception." "Can't it wait?" I asked. My voice sounded thin, like dry leaves scraping together. "I just want to go to the house and lie down for an hour before people start coming over." "No," Lydia said. She reached out and took my elbow. Her grip was firm, guiding me not toward our cars, but back toward the funeral home's side entrance. "It is better if we handle the administrative side now. I do not want to ruin the reception with paperwork." "Paperwork?" I asked. "Lydia, we just buried them. And the world keeps turning," she said. She steered me into a small viewing room off the main hallway. It was empty, smelling faintly of lilies and floor wax. There was a small round table in the corner with a box of tissues and a pitcher of water. Lydia gestured for me to sit. She remained standing. She reached into her oversized designer tote bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She placed it on the table between us. The sound of the heavy paper hitting the wood was louder than it should have been. "I know this is hard," Lydia said. She sounded like she was reading from a script. "But Mom and Dad wanted me to handle things. They knew you were emotional. They wanted to make sure everything was streamlined." "Streamlined?" I stared at the envelope. "What is that?" "It is a copy of the updated will," Lydia said. "And the transfer deeds." I frowned, wiping a smudge of mascara from under my eye. "Updated?" I thought the will was the one they drafted when I turned 25, the one where everything was split down the middle. Lydia's face didn't move. They changed it. Scarlett, about 6 months ago. They were worried about your financial situation. They knew you were renting in the city, living paycheck to paycheck. They wanted to ensure the assets were managed by someone with more stability. I am not living paycheck to paycheck, I said, a flash of defensiveness cutting through the fog of grief. I have a senior manager position. I am fine. The point is, Lydia interrupted, her voice dropping an octave, becoming softer but harder, like wet cement. They left the house to me. Sole ownership. The room seemed to tilt. What? The house, she repeated. And the primary accounts, to be administered by me. I have the discretion to help you out, of course, and I will, but the property is in my name effective immediately. I have already filed the preliminary paperwork. That doesn't make sense, I said. I stood up, my legs shaking. Dad told me at Christmas that the house was our safety net. Both of us. He said that specifically. Dad was confused at the end, Lydia said quickly. Look, Scarlett, I am trying to do this gracefully. I have the documents here. You can read them later. But there is an immediate issue we need to discuss. She paused, and for the first time, she looked almost nervous, not guilty, but tense, like a bomb disposal technician cutting a wire. I need you to stay at the motel tonight, she said. I stared at her. What? No, I am staying at the house. My suitcase is there. My room is there. It is not your room anymore, Lydia said. It is my house. And frankly, Scarlett, you are hysterical. You have been crying nonstop for 3 days. It is upsetting the neighbors. I need to secure the property and start the inventory process without emotional outbursts. You are kicking me out? I asked. The words felt heavy and absurd in my mouth. On the day of the funeral? I am setting a boundary, Lydia said. To avoid conflict. I knew you would react like this. This is exactly why they put me in charge. She pushed the envelope toward me. Take this. Go to the motel. We will talk in a few days when you are calm. I am going home, I said. I didn't take the envelope. I turned and walked out of the room. Scarlett, she called after me. Do not go there. I ignored her. I walked out into the blinding sunlight, got into my rental car, and drove. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely keep the wheel straight. I drove on autopilot, navigating the familiar streets of the town where I had grown up. I passed the high school, the ice cream parlor, the park where I had learned to ride a bike. It all looked like a film set for a movie I was no longer starring in. I turned onto Elm Street. The house was at the end of the cul-de-sac, a sprawling 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch and a giant oak tree in the front yard. It was the only constant in my life. No matter where I moved or what job I lost or what boyfriend broke my heart, that house was there. The smell of cedar and old books, the creak of the third step. I pulled into the driveway. My pulse was hammering in my throat. I expected to see Lydia's car right behind me, but the street was empty. I walked up the porch steps. The painted gray wood felt solid under my feet. I reached into my purse and pulled out my keychain. It was a stupid little thing, a plastic cat I had bought when I was 12, but the brass key on it was the original. I had carried it for 15 years. I slid the key into the lock. It went in halfway and stopped. I frowned and jiggled it. Maybe the tumblers were sticky. It was an old house. I pulled it out and tried again. It hit a hard metal wall inside the cylinder. I leaned closer. The brass of the lock looked shiny. New. No scratches around the keyhole. No, I whispered. I tried the knob. Locked. I rang the doorbell, listening to the chime echo inside the empty house. Silence. I stepped back and looked at the porch. That was when I saw them, to the left of the door, stacked neatly against the siding, were 3 cardboard boxes and my suitcase. My suitcase was standing upright, the handle extended. On top of the boxes was a clear plastic bin containing my toiletries from the bathroom and the few clothes I had hung in the guest closet when I arrived 3 days ago. It looked like an eviction display. It looked like garbage waiting for pickup. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked around. The Hendersons next door were in their yard, watering their hydrangeas. Mrs. Henderson looked up, saw me, and immediately looked down. Turning her back, they knew, everyone knew. I walked over to the boxes. One was open. It was full of old yearbooks, photo albums, and a stuffed bear from my childhood bedroom. She had packed up my things. She had gone into my room, my sanctuary, and packed my life into cardboard boxes while I was at the funeral home greeting guests. A truck pulled up to the curb. It was a white pickup with no markings. A man in gray coveralls got out. He looked bored. He walked up the driveway carrying a toolbox. Then a sleek black sedan pulled up behind him. Lydia got out. She didn't look at me. She walked up the driveway, her heels clicking on the concrete. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. The handyman stood next to her, looking at his boots. "I told you not to come here," Lydia said. She checked her watch. "You are making a scene." "You changed the locks," I said. I couldn't scream. I didn't have the air for it. "When did you change the locks?" "This morning," she said. "Before the service. Mr. Reynolds here was kind enough to handle it for me." She gestured to the man, who gave me a brief, apologetic nod before looking away. "Why?" I asked. "Lydia, why are you doing this?" "Liability," she said. The word sounded alien in the context of our family home. "An asset protection. As the executor and sole beneficiary, I have a duty to secure the estate. You do not reside here, Scarlett. You are a guest. And given your state, I cannot have you wandering around the property unsupervised. You might break something, or lose something." "I am your sister," I shouted. The sound tore out of my throat, ragged and ugly. "This is my home." "Legally, it is not," she said. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. It sounded like she was reading a contract. "You have your personal effects, Mr. Reynolds has placed them here for your convenience. You can take them and go, but you cannot step inside." I looked at the door. I wanted to charge past her, break a window, do something violent and undeniable, but the handyman shifted his weight, moving slightly between me and the door. He wasn't threatening, but he was a physical barrier. Lydia had brought muscle. "This isn't you," I said to her. "Who is telling you to say these things? Asset protection? Liability? You don't talk like that." Lydia's eyes narrowed behind her sunglasses. "I am the responsible one. Scarlett, I have always been the responsible one. Now, please, take your boxes. If you do not leave, I will have to call the police to have you trespassed. Do not make me do that on the day of our parents' funeral." The threat hung in the hot, humid air. Trespassed. She was threatening to have me arrested for standing on the porch where I learned to walk. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something that frightened me more than her anger. I saw blankness. She wasn't enjoying this. She wasn't sad about it. She was just executing a task. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. I picked up the plastic bin. I couldn't carry the boxes. "I will come back for the rest," I said. "I will have them sent to your apartment in the city," Lydia said. "Do not come back here. Scarlett, not until I tell you it is okay." I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, the wheels bumping loudly on every step. I loaded my car, my vision blurred by tears I refused to let fall while she was watching. I got in, slammed the door, and reversed out of the driveway without looking back. I drove until I found a motel on the edge of town, a place called the Sleepy Pine with a flickering neon sign and a parking lot full of trucks. I checked into a room that smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Panic was setting in, a cold, sharp needle in my gut. I took out my phone and searched for the county probate court. I needed to know if she was lying. Maybe she was just bluffing. Maybe she hadn't filed anything yet. I dialed the number for the clerk's office. It was 4 in the afternoon. They would be closing soon. "County probate, this is Brenda," a voice said. "Hi," I said. "I need to check on a filing. For Bennett, Robert and Martha Bennett." There was a typing sound. "Date of death?" Sunday, I said. 2 days ago. Honey, if they passed 2 days ago, we likely won't have anything in the system yet. Usually takes a few weeks for the death certificates to— Oh, wait. The typing stopped. Here it is. My stomach dropped. It is there? Yes, Brenda said. Filed yesterday morning. Expedited filing. Estate of Robert and Martha Bennett. Executor named as Lydia Bennett. Looks like there is a petition for summary administration. Yesterday? I asked. But they died on Sunday. How can you file on Monday morning? Fast work, Brenda said. Documents must have been prepped and ready to go. The judge signed the temporary orders this morning. Is there a problem? I am their daughter, I said. Scarlett Bennett. I didn't know about this. Well, you are listed here, Brenda said. Listed as an interested party. Notice was waived. Waived? I didn't waive anything. According to the file, there is a waiver of notice signed by you, dated last week. The room spun. I never signed anything. I wasn't even in town last week. Look, Miss, Brenda said, her voice turning cautious. I just read what is on the screen. If you want to contest it, you need a lawyer. I can't give legal advice. Who filed it? I asked. Was it a lawyer? Pro se filing, Brenda said. That means your sister filed it herself. But the preparation, let me see. Notarized by a quick seal mobile notary, witnessed by a T. Miller and a J. Kowalski. I don't know those people, I whispered. You need a lawyer, Brenda repeated, and then the line went dead. I dropped the phone on the bedspread. Nausea rolled over me in a wave. I ran to the bathroom and retched into the toilet until there was nothing left but bile. I sat on the cold tile floor, shivering, pressing my forehead against the porcelain. It moved too fast. That was the only thought I could hold on to. Probate took months. Everyone said it took months. Lydia had done it in 24 hours. She had a waiver with my signature on it, a signature I never gave. I crawled back to the bed and opened the envelope Lydia had given me. My hands were shaking so bad I ripped the paper. I pulled out the new will. It looked official. Thick bond paper, legal jargon. Robert Bennett, being of sound mind. I skipped to the end. The date next to the signatures was 3 days before they died. They were in the ICU 3 days before they died. My father was on a ventilator. He couldn't hold a pen. I looked at the signature. It was shaky. A scrawl. It looked like his name, but it looked drawn, like someone tracing a memory of a signature. And the notary stamp, dated July 12th. I closed my eyes. July 12th. That was the day Dad went into the coma. The grief, which had been a dull ache, suddenly sharpened into a pressure behind my eyes so intense I thought my skull would fracture. This wasn't just loss. This was theft. I spent the night in that motel room, unable to sleep. The darkness felt heavy, suffocating. To keep the panic at bay, I unlocked my phone and opened my gallery. I scrolled back years. I found a video from a Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I pressed play. On the tiny screen, my father was carving a turkey, making a bad joke about the bird being dry as a desert. My mother laughed. That deep, throaty laugh that used to embarrass me and now sounded like the most beautiful music in the world. Lydia was there, too, in the background, checking her phone, looking annoyed. I watched it over and over. I looped my mother's laugh. I held the phone to my ear, closing my eyes, trying to pretend I was in that dining room, smelling the sage and the roasted meat, feeling the warmth of the house. But every time the video ended, the silence of the motel room rushed back in. The contrast between the warmth on the screen and the cold legal documents scattered on the bedspread made me feel like I was losing my mind. How could the people in that video be the same people who signed these papers? They wouldn't. They couldn't. The next morning, I packed my bag. I had to leave. I had to get back to my job, my apartment, my life in the city. I couldn't fight this here. Not alone. Not with this crushing weight on my chest. I stopped for gas on the way out of town. I was pumping fuel, staring blankly at the numbers ticking up on the display, when a car pulled up at the pump opposite me. Scarlett? I looked up. It was Sarah, an old friend from high school. She looked tired. her hair in a messy bun. She walked around the pump and hugged me. I stiffened, not ready for contact, but I let her hold me for a second. "I am so sorry," she said. "I saw the obituary. I didn't want to bug you at the service." "Thank you," I said. Sarah hesitated. She looked around, then lowered her voice. "I saw Lydia a few weeks ago, at the coffee shop downtown." "Oh?" I said, reaching for the nozzle. "Yeah. She was meeting with some guys. They looked corporate, not local." "Who were they?" "I don't know," Sarah said, "but I saw a folder on the table. It had a logo. Apex Estate Services or something like that. I remember because it sounded ominous. I assumed you knew. I thought maybe your parents were planning things." "Apex Estate Services," I repeated. The name meant nothing to me. "Yeah," Sarah said. "Lydia looked intense. She was taking notes like crazy. I just thought it was weird. Usually, people go to old Mr. Henderson for wills, right?" "Right," I said. "Mr. Henderson." "Anyway," Sarah said, stepping back. "I am sure it is nothing. Safe travels. Scar, take care of yourself." I finished pumping gas, my mind racing. Estate services, not a law firm, a service. I got back in the car, but I couldn't leave yet. I needed one more thing. I drove back to the house. I parked on the street this time, not the driveway. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the lawn. The house looked peaceful, indifferent to the drama unfolding inside. I walked up the path. I didn't try the door. I knew it was locked. I just wanted to look in the window, just to say goodbye to the living room. Lydia opened the door before I even reached the porch. She must have been watching from the window. She was wearing a bathrobe, holding a mug of coffee. She looked exhausted, but her face hardened when she saw me. "I told you," she said. "Stay away." "I just want to walk through," I said. My voice was quiet, pleading. "Just once, Lydia, to say goodbye. I won't touch anything. I just want to see the living room." "No," she said. "Please," I said. "I am leaving town. Just 5 minutes." Lydia took a sip of her coffee. She looked down at me from the height of the porch, her eyes cold and absolute. "You left years ago. Scarlett," she said. "You moved away. You built a life somewhere else. You don't get to come back now and play the grieving daughter in my house. Don't rewrite history now." The words hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. "You left years ago, as if my moving for a job meant I had resigned from the family, as if distance erased love." "That is not fair," I whispered. "Life isn't fair," Lydia said. "Go home. Scarlett." She stepped back and closed the heavy oak door. I heard the deadbolt slide home. Click. I stood there for a long minute, looking at the wood, the grain I had memorized as a child. I felt the tears coming again, hot and stinging, but I wiped them away with the back of my hand. I turned around and walked back to my car. I got in. The back seat was full of mismatched boxes, a few clothes, and a plastic bin of toiletries. It was all I had left of my past. I started the engine and drove toward the highway. The town blurred past me, the bakery, the school, the church. I promised myself I would stop looking back. I promised myself I would focus on the road ahead, on surviving. But as I merged onto the interstate, watching the sign for my hometown disappear in the rearview mirror, one thought kept circling in my mind. Louder than the radio, louder than my grief. The notary stamp was dated 3 days before they died. My father couldn't hold a pen. If the truth was on paper, why did it feel like a lie? I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was leaving, but I wasn't finished. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My sister had stolen my home, and she had done it while our parents were still breathing. I drove east, into the blinding morning sun, and for the first time in 3 days, I didn't cry. I just drove. I moved 200 miles south to a city called Oak Creek. It was far enough away that I wouldn't run into anyone who knew my parents, but close enough that the climate was the same humidity in August, the same gray, pressing sky in November. I rented a one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a complex that smelled perpetually of carpet shampoo and other people's dinner. It was beige, the walls were beige, the carpet was beige, and the blinds were a dusty, sun-faded cream. It was the perfect color for a life that had been bleached of all its history. I built a routine like a fortress. That was the only way to survive the first year. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I drank black coffee. I went to the gym and ran on the treadmill until my lungs burned and the numbers on the display blurred into a red haze. I showered. I went to work at a mid-sized logistics firm where I managed shipping manifests, a job that required exactness, focus, and absolutely no emotional investment. I came home. I ate a salad or a sandwich over the sink. I read books that had nothing to do with families or death. I slept. Repeat. I told myself I was moving on. I told myself that the human brain was resilient, that adaptation was our greatest survival trait. But grief is not a linear process. It is a sniper in the bushes. It would hit me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was driving home. The rain would start to drum against the windshield, a specific, rhythmic tapping that sounded exactly like the rain on the tin roof of the sun porch back home. Suddenly, I wasn't in Oak Creek. I was 6 years old, sitting on the floor with my father, watching him fix a broken toaster while the storm raged outside. I could smell the ozone and the old coffee grounds. I could hear his humming. The memory would wash over me so violently that I would have to pull over to the shoulder of the highway, gripping the steering wheel, gasping for air as if the car were filling with water. Or I would be walking through a department store, and I would catch the scent of cedar, not the fake, chemical cedar of air fresheners, but the sharp, woody smell of a cedar chest. My mother kept her quilts in a cedar chest at the foot of her bed. That smell meant safety. It meant I was sick, and she was getting out the heavy blanket. It meant winter mornings. I would stand there in the aisle, surrounded by strangers, tears streaming down my face, paralyzed by a smell that belonged to a room I was legally forbidden to enter. I tried to fight back in those early months. I really did. About 6 weeks after the funeral, I found a lawyer in Oak Creek. He was a kind man with a messy office and a stain on his tie. The kind of lawyer who handled DUIs and simple divorces. I sat in his office and told him everything. I told him about the funeral, the side room, the handyman, the locks. I told him about the notary stamp and the shaky signature. He listened, nodding sympathetically, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I was finished, he put his pen down and looked at me over his reading glasses. "Ms. Bennett," he said gently, "do you have a copy of the previous will? The one you claim was replaced?" "No," I said. "It was in the safe at the house. Lydia has it." "Do you have a copy of the medical records proving your father was incapacitated on the date the new will was signed?" "No," I said. "I can get them, though I am his daughter." "Actually," he said, "if the estate has been probated and your sister is the executor, she holds the privilege on those records. You would have to sue to get a court order to unseal them." "So let us sue," I said. "We can," he said. "But you are alleging fraud. That is a serious charge. The burden of proof is on you, and since the probate case is in another county, I would have to refer you to someone there, or charge you for travel, to even open the file and start discovery, to file the contest. You are looking at a retainer of $5,000, and that is just to start. If she fights it, and she will, it could go to 20, 30,000 easily." I sat back in the chair. $5,000? "And I have to be honest with you," he added. "Without hard evidence, documents, recordings, witness statements, it is your word against a notarized legal document. Courts generally presume notarized documents are valid. It is an uphill climb on a slippery slope. I didn't have $5,000. I had the deposit on my apartment, my car payments, and a savings account that had been drained by the move. I tried to email Lydia. I kept it professional. I asked for copies of the family trust, the medical records, and the inventory of the house. Her reply came 3 days later. It was 3 sentences long. Scarlett, your constant emails are bordering on harassment. The estate is being handled according to the law and Dad's wishes. Please stop acting unstable and let me grieve in peace. Unstable. The word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. Was I unstable? I had cried in the funeral home. I had screamed on the porch. I was living in a beige apartment, weeping over the smell of cedar. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was the crazy one. That was the insidiousness of it. She didn't just take the house. She took my narrative. She made me question my own memory of who I was. Was I always the difficult one? The weak one? Had my parents secretly discussed this for years, shaking their heads over my inability to launch, deciding that Lydia was the only one who could be trusted with the legacy? I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Evans. She was a calm, older woman who wore heavy cardigans and drank tea during our sessions. I went to her not because I wanted to move on, but because I felt like I was dissolving. It is not just the house, I told her during our 4th session. It is the erasure. It is like I never existed in that family. Lydia has the photos. She has the home videos. She has the height chart pencil marked on the doorframe of the pantry. If I don't have proof that I was their daughter, am I still their daughter? You carry the memory. Doctor, Evans said, no one can take that. But memories fade, I said. I am already forgetting the sound of my father's voice. I have to listen to that video on my phone to remember it. And Lydia? She is rewriting the history. She is telling everyone she saved the estate. She is the hero. I am the mess. You are surviving, Doctor, Evans corrected. There is a difference between being a mess and being in mourning while under attack. You are under attack. Scarlett, it is natural to feel defensive. Survival became my identity. Year 1 bled into year 2. The sharp edges of the grief began to dull, replaced by a heavy, low-grade ache that settled in my bones like arthritis. I made friends at work. I went to happy hours. I even went on a few dates. There was a man named Mark, an accountant with a nice laugh and kind eyes. We went out for Italian food. We drank red wine. He asked me about my family. My parents passed away a couple of years ago, I said, twirling my pasta. I am so sorry, he said. That must have been incredibly hard. Are you close with your siblings? I froze. What was the answer? Yes, I have a sister. But she stole my inheritance and changed the locks while the funeral dirt was fresh? If I said that, I would sound like a character in a Lifetime movie. I would sound bitter, paranoid, and yes, unstable. People didn't want to hear about estate fraud on a first date. They wanted to hear about fond memories and holiday traditions. I have a sister, I said finally. But we are not close. We drifted apart after the funeral. That happens, Mark said, nodding sagely. Grief changes people. He had no idea. I never told him the truth. I never told anyone the full truth. It felt too dangerous, as if speaking it aloud would summon Lydia and her lawyers. So I kept a piece of myself hidden, a locked room inside my own head that matched the locked house 200 miles away. Then, the first crack appeared. It was December of the 2nd year. The holiday season was always the hardest. The relentless cheer, the commercials about coming home, the aggressive togetherness of it all. I came home from work one rainy Tuesday to find a stack of mail in my box. Most of it was junk. But one red envelope stood out. It was a Christmas card. It had been forwarded. The yellow sticker from the post office was plastered across the front, redirecting it from my parents' address to my apartment in Oak Creek. I looked at the original address. Scarlett Bennett, the Bennett residence, 14 Elm Street. It was addressed to me. At the house, I opened it. It was from a distant cousin on my mother's side, an elderly woman named Aunt Clara, who lived in Florida and probably hadn't updated her address book in a decade. She didn't know about the death, or the locks, or the eviction. To her, I was still Scarlett at the Bennett residence. Seeing my name next to that address hit me with a force that knocked the wind out of me. The Bennett residence. It looked so official, so correct. Why had this been forwarded? I had put in a change of address form for myself when I moved. obviously, but mail addressed to the house usually just stayed at the house, unless Lydia explicitly marked it "Return to sender" or forwarded it. Lydia must have seen this. She must have held this red envelope in her hand, seen Aunt Clara's shaky handwriting, seen my name connected to her property, and tossed it back in the mail with a sneer. But it got me thinking. If Aunt Clara thought I was there, who else did? That night, late, when I couldn't sleep, I opened my laptop. I had avoided looking at the house online. I didn't want to see it on Zillow. I didn't want to see the zestimate of the life I had lost. But tonight, I went to the county recorder's website. It was a clunky, outdated portal that looked like it had been built in the late 90s. I typed in the address, 14 Elm Street. The results populated a list of documents. Grant deed. Date, July 15th. Year 1. The transfer to Lydia. Affidavit of death. Quitclaim deed. Then, I saw something else. Deed of trust. Date, November 12th. Year 2. A loan. I clicked on the details. It was a short-form summary. Borrower, Lydia Bennett. Lender, Horizon Capital Group. Amount, $65,000. I frowned. Why did she need a loan? The house was paid off. My parents had burned the mortgage papers in a celebratory bonfire when I was 10. I remembered the sparks flying up into the night sky. The house was free and clear. That was the whole point. That was the legacy. Lydia had a good job. She was a logistics manager for a major trucking company. She made 6 figures. Why would she take out a $65,000 loan against the house less than 18 months after getting it? I scrolled down. Deed of trust. Date, February 4th, Year 2. Lender, Quick Cash Solutions, LLC. Amount, $22,000. 2 loans. Nearly $90,000 of equity pulled out in 3 months. I stared at the glowing screen. The names of the lenders didn't sound like banks. Horizon Capital, Quick Cash Solutions. They sounded like predatory lenders. They sounded like trouble. My heart started to beat faster. Was she in trouble? Or was she renovating? Maybe she was putting in a pool. Maybe she was redoing the kitchen, tearing out Mom's old oak cabinets and putting in white marble and stainless steel. The thought made me sick. She was cannibalizing the house. She was stripping the equity my father had worked 40 years to build, turning the physical safety of our childhood into cash for What? It is none of your business, I said aloud to the empty room. She owns it. She can burn it down if she wants. But the entries sat in my mind like splinters. I couldn't pick them out. Year 3 arrived with a promotion at work. I was now a senior logistics coordinator. I had a slightly nicer office with a window that looked out over the parking lot. I bought a new car, a sensible, reliable sedan. I was stable. I was a model citizen. I had to go back to my hometown in October of that year. I needed to see an old specialist for a dental issue, a crown that my childhood dentist had put in and that only he had the records for. It was a flimsy excuse, but I took it. I drove into town with my sunglasses on, feeling like a spy in enemy territory. The town looked exactly the same, which felt like an insult. How could the world be so unchanged when my universe had collapsed? I went to the dentist. I got the crown fixed. I was walking back to my car when I realized I needed water. I stopped at the grocery store, the same grocery store where my mother had shopped every Thursday for 30 years. I was in the bottled water aisle when I heard a voice. Scarlett? Scarlett Bennett? I froze. I turned slowly. It was Mrs. Gable, a woman who had been in my mother's book club. She looked older, her hair thinner, but she had the same kind, inquisitive face. Mrs. Gable, I said, forcing a smile. Hi, it is good to see you. Oh, honey, she said, reaching out to squeeze my arm. We haven't seen you in ages, not since the services. I live in Oak Creek now, I said, working hard. That is good, she said. That is good. We worry about you girls. You know, it is so hard losing both parents. She paused, adjusting her purse strap. She looked around, then leaned in conspiratorially. How is Lydia doing? She asked. She is fine. I think, I said. We aren't in touch as much as I would like. Busy lives. I bet, Mrs. Gable said. She lowered her voice further. You know, I drive by the house on my way to bingo. It is active. Active? I asked. The word sent a chill down my spine. Oh, yes, cars coming and going at all hours, not just hers, strange cars, men in suits, and sometimes, well, rougher-looking types. She frowned. I heard she is running her business out of there now. Her business? I asked. She works for a trucking company. Oh, I thought she started her own thing, Mrs. Gable said. Consulting or something. That is what Betty told me. Said there are partners coming and going, sometimes late at night. She patted my arm again. I just hope she is careful. It is a residential street. You know? The neighbors talk. I am sure she is fine, I said, my voice tight. Lydia always has a plan. Of course, Mrs. Gable said. Well, you look wonderful, dear. Don't be a stranger. I walked out of the store without buying the water. My hands were shaking. Partners coming and going. Rougher types, running a business. It felt like a desecration. My parents' home was a sanctuary. It was where we had quiet Sunday dinners and watched Jeopardy. It wasn't a place for partners and late-night traffic. It sounded seedy. It sounded desperate. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was Lydia. I stared at the screen for a full minute before opening it. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. Hey, Scarlett. Hope you're well. I'm doing some paperwork cleanup for the estate taxes. Need your current address to send a final K-1 form or something. Can you shoot it over? The tone was breezy. Casual. Hope you're well. Shoot it over. It was the tone of a sister who hadn't evicted me. It was a lie. I hesitated. If I gave her my address, she had it. She knew where I slept. But if I didn't, she could claim I was obstructing the estate process. She could tell everyone I was being difficult. I typed out my address. 402 Maple Avenue, apartment 2B, Oak Creek. I hit send. Thanks, she replied instantly. Take care. That was it. No. How are you? No. I miss you. Just data collection. I waited for the tax form. It never came. Weeks passed, then months. The silence returned. But now it felt different. It felt like the silence of a hunter waiting in a blind. Why did she really want the address? Was she checking to see if I was still renting? Was she making sure I wasn't coming back? The uncertainty was a specific kind of cruelty. It kept me on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped near the end of year 4. I came home to another red-letter day in the mailbox. But this wasn't a holiday card. It was a standard, mass-marketing letter from a national bank. The kind that usually says, "You're pre-approved," or "LOA PR." I almost threw it away. But something caught my eye. It was addressed to Scarlett Bennett, 402 Maple Avenue, apartment 2B, Oak Creek. But below the address window, in the bold text teasing the offer, it said, "Unlock the equity in your home at 14 Elm Street." I stopped breathing. I took the letter inside and sat at my kitchen table. I tore it open. Dear Scarlett, based on your current property profile, you may be eligible for a home equity line of credit of up to $100,000 on your property at 14 Elm Street. Property values in zip code 99801 have risen by 12%. Don't let your equity sit idle. I read it 3 times. Marketing databases are messy. I knew that. I worked in logistics. I knew data got crossed. But this was specific. It linked my current address, the one I had given Lydia a year ago, with the old house, and it addressed me as the owner, or at least, as someone with equity. If Lydia had transferred the deed solely to herself 4 years ago, why did this bank's database still think I had equity? Why did their algorithm flag me as a prospect for a loan on a house I didn't own? Unless the transfer wasn't as clean as she said, or unless my name was still on something. I looked at the fine print at the bottom. Source, public records, and credit header data. Credit header data. That meant my credit report was somehow still linking me to the mortgage or the deed. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. If I was linked to the house, was I linked to the debt? Was I linked to the $65,000 and the $22,000 she had pulled out? I went to my bedroom closet. I pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf. It was where I kept the few things I had saved from the funeral. The program, a dried flower from the spray, and the envelope Lydia had given me in the viewing room. I opened the envelope. I took out the new will and the property transfer claim she had shown me. I hadn't looked at them in years. I had been too afraid. I laid them out on my bed. I took a picture of the signature page with my phone. I zoomed in. My father's signature, Robert Bennett. I looked at it until my eyes watered. It was shaky, but there was something else. A slight hesitation in the ink flow on the upward loop of the B. Like someone had paused, unsure of the shape. I remembered the video. Dad couldn't hold a fork. I went back to the computer. I printed the county records showing the loans. I printed the screenshot of the bank marketing letter. I went to the office supply store down the street and bought a sturdy black plastic folder. I didn't buy a cheap paper one. I bought one that closed with a snap. I put everything inside. The screenshots, the dates, the notes about the Quick Seal mobile notary, the conversation with Mrs. Gable about the partners. I wasn't ready to fight. I didn't have the money, and I didn't have the strength to face Lydia's gaslighting again. Not yet. But I could no longer live with a story that didn't add up. The math was wrong. The timeline was wrong. And now, the bank was telling me that my name was still in the game. I closed the folder. The snap was loud in the quiet apartment. I am not crazy, I whispered to myself. I wasn't starting a war. I was just gathering ammunition. I was refusing to be erased. I put the folder in the bottom drawer of my desk, under a stack of old tax returns. It sat there, a black box of doubt, waiting for the spark that I knew, deep down, was coming. I didn't have to wait long. The envelope was green. It was not the festive green of a holiday card or the pale, institutional green of a government check. It was a harsh, neon lime stripe running along the edge of a certified mail slip, a color designed to induce anxiety before you even touch the paper. It was 5 years to the month since I had buried my parents. I was 38 years old. My life in Oak Creek had calcified into something that resembled success. I was a senior logistics manager. I had a credit score of 780. I had a potted fern in my living room that I had managed to keep alive for 3 consecutive years. I had stopped crying in grocery stores when I smelled cedar. I thought I was safe. The mail carrier, a young man with headphones around his neck, held out the electronic pad for me to sign. He looked bored. He had no idea he was handing me a grenade. I scribbled my name, took the envelope, and closed the door. I stood in my hallway, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The return address was a law firm in the state capital. A name I did not recognize. Garrison. Finch Associates. I tore the tab on the back. Inside was a single, tri-folded document on heavy bond paper. The header was in bold, all-caps font that seemed to shout at me from the page. Notice of default and intent to foreclose. I read the words, but they didn't make sense. It was like trying to read a foreign language where you only recognize the nouns. Deed of trust, lien, arrears, and then the property address, 14 Elm Street, and below that, the borrowers, Lydia Bennett and Scarlett Bennett. My knees actually gave out. I didn't swoon or faint like a Victorian heroine. My legs simply decided they could no longer support the weight of my body, and I sat down hard on the laminate floor of my hallway. I read it again. Scarlett Bennett. According to this piece of paper, I was not just an evicted sister. I was a co-borrower on a loan that was $45,000 past due. The total principal listed was $120,000. The shock that hit me wasn't the hot, weeping grief I had felt at the funeral. This was cold. It was sharp, humiliating, and terrifyingly practical. In a split second, I wasn't thinking about my father's laugh or my mother's quilts. I was thinking about the background check for the new job I had applied for last week. I was thinking about my lease renewal coming up in 3 months. I was thinking about the fact that a default of this magnitude would torpedo my credit score, turning me into a financial pariah. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was a direct threat to my survival. I scrambled up, grabbing my phone with trembling fingers. I dialed the number listed in the Contact for Resolution section. It rang 4 times. Garrison, Finch Associates, Debt Recovery Division. A woman's voice answered. She sounded tired and metallic. "This is Scarlett Bennett," I said. My voice was higher than usual, tight with panic. "I just received a notice of default. Reference number." I scanned the page, my eyes blurring. "Reference number 4492. "One moment," she said. I heard the click of a keyboard. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, then 20. "Yes, Ms. Bennett," she said. "We have sent 3 prior notices to the property address. Since we received no response, we moved to the secondary address on file. You are currently in default on the second lien against the property." "I don't live at the property," I said. "And I never signed for a second lien. I don't own the house. My sister does." "The deed may be in your sister's name," the woman said. Her voice bored, reciting a script she had used 1,000 times. "But the loan documents list you as a co-signatory. You are jointly and severally liable for the debt." "That is impossible," I said. "I haven't lived there in 5 years. I haven't signed anything." "Well, ma'am, we have a notarized deed of trust with your signature dated October of last year." "October?" I almost laughed. I was in Oak Creek in October. I was nowhere near that house. "And we have a record of statements being mailed to you," she continued, ignoring me. "To a P.O. box in your hometown." "I don't have a P.O. box," I said. "I have never had a P.O. box." "Ms. Bennett," the woman said, her tone hardening, "I cannot adjudicate fraud over the phone. If you are claiming identity theft, you need to file a police report. But as of right now, this account is moving to foreclosure proceedings in 30 days unless the arrears are cleared." "I want to see it," I said. "Send me the proof. Send me the signature." "I can email you a secure link to the validation package," she said. "Do it," I said. "Now." I gave her my email address and hung up. I sat at my computer, hitting the refresh button every 5 seconds. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Ping, the email arrived. I clicked the link. A PDF opened. I scrolled past the legal jargon, past the terrifying numbers, down to the signature page. There it was. Scarlett Bennett. It was a good forgery, better than the one on the will. This one looked like my signature from 5 years ago, the way I used to sign checks before I streamlined it for efficiency at work. It had the loop on the S that I hadn't used in 3 years. I stared at it, feeling the blood drain from my face. Someone had practiced this. Someone had studied my old handwriting. I looked at the notary block. It was stamped by a notary public named James T. Miller. The location wasn't a bank or a law firm. It was an address on the outskirts of my hometown. The UPS Store Quick Ship Center, a strip mall. My financial life had been signed away in a strip mall next to a vape shop. By a notary I had never met, witnessed by a sister who had kicked me out. The rage came then. It started in my stomach and burned its way up my throat. For 5 years, I had played nice. I had accepted the exile. I had told myself that peace was worth more than property. I had let her have the house because I thought that was the price of my freedom. But she hadn't just taken the house. She had kept me tethered to it. She had used my name as a lifeline to drag me down with her. I packed a bag. I called my boss and told him I had a family emergency. I didn't tell him the emergency was a crime scene. I got in my car and drove north. The drive took 3 hours. Every mile felt like I was traveling backward in time. Shedding the layers of the person I had built in Oak Creek. By the time I hit the county line, I wasn't the senior logistics manager anymore. I was the little sister who had been told to wait outside. I didn't go to a hotel this time. I drove straight to Elm Street. I parked 3 houses down, under the shade of an overgrown maple tree. I turned off the engine and just looked. The house was wrong. The Victorian charm was gone. The warm, cream-colored siding my father had lovingly power-washed every spring had been painted a dark, aggressive slate gray. The white trim was now black. It looked like a house that had been flipped by someone who learned about design from Instagram. It looked trendy. It looked cold. It looked like a generic investment property, devoid of the history that lived in its bones. There were cars in the driveway, 3 of them. One was Lydia's black sedan, looking worse for wear. With a dent in the rear bumper, the other 2 were unfamiliar. A rusted pickup truck with a ladder rack and a flashy, late-model sports car that looked ridiculous parked on our quiet suburban street. It felt like theft. Not the legal kind, but the spiritual kind. She had taken the container of our memories and painted over it to make it look like money. I wanted to march up there and bang on the door. I wanted to scream, but the letter in my purse was heavy with legal implications. If I went up there now, I would just be the crazy sister again. I needed more than anger. I needed facts. I put the car in gear and drove to the county recorder's office. The office smelled of dust and toner. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels respectful of the millions of secrets filed away in the archives. I walked up to the counter. The clerk was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and a sweater draped over her shoulders. Her name tag said Barbara. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I need to pull the full chain of title and lien history for a property," I said. 14 Elm Street. Barbara nodded and turned to her computer. "One moment," she typed. I waited, gripping the edge of the counter. "Do you want just the current deed or everything?" she asked. "Everything," I said. "Going back 5 years, and any associated liens or judgments. That is going to be a thick file," she warned. 25 cents a page for printing. "I don't care," I said. "Print it all." 10 minutes later, I was sitting at a wooden table in the back of the room with a stack of paper an inch thick. I started sorting. It was a graveyard of bad decisions. First, the transfer deed from my parents to Lydia. Then, the first loan, $65,000. Then, the second loan, $22,000. But then I saw things I hadn't seen online. There was a mechanic's lien filed by a roofing company in year 3. Released 2 months later. There was a judgment lien from a credit card company against Lydia Bennett, attached to the property, and then, the big one, the one that made my stomach turn, a correction deed filed 3 months before my parents died. I pulled the page closer. It was a document purporting to correct a boundary line, but buried in the fine print was a clause that added Lydia as a joint tenant with right of survivorship to a specific parcel of the land, the parcel the garage sat on. I looked at the date. My mother had been in the hospital for her first round of chemo. My father had been driving her back and forth every day, exhausted, terrified, barely sleeping. Lydia had been helping with the paperwork. I kept digging. I found the deed of trust for the loan that was currently in default. There was my signature, and there, listed as collateral, was not just the house, but all fixtures, rents, and insurance proceeds. She had monetized everything. I looked at the timeline again. The activity spiked every time there was a medical crisis. When Mom got sick, the correction deed appeared. When Dad went into the ICU, the new will was notarized. It wasn't a sudden theft after the funeral. It was a slow-motion burglary that had happened while they were still alive. She had been picking their pockets while they were fighting for their lives. "Finding what you need?" I looked up. Barbara, the clerk, was standing a few feet away, holding a stack of files. She wasn't looking at me, but her voice was directed at me. "I don't know," I said. "It is a mess." Barbara took a step closer. The room was empty except for us. "We see a lot of paperwork come through here," she said softly. "You learn to spot the patterns." "Patterns?" I asked. She tapped a finger on the table, near the stack of papers. "Estate services, asset protection firms, they pop up like weeds. They target families in crisis, medical emergencies, dementia. They come in offering to handle the burden of the paperwork. I froze. My sister used a service, Apex Estate Services. Barbara's expression didn't change, but her eyes tightened slightly. I have seen that name, and others like it. They bring their own notaries. They bring their own witnesses, usually people who work for them, convenient witnesses. Is it legal? I asked. Technically? Barbara shrugged. Maybe, if the signatures are real, if the person knew what they were signing. But morally, it is exploitation disguised as help. They coach the family member who is most eager. They tell them they are saving the legacy. Usually, they are just stripping the equity. She adjusted her glasses. I am not taking sides, but if I were you, I would look very closely at the notary logs, and I would get a lawyer who isn't afraid of a mess. She walked away before I could thank her. I left the courthouse with the stack of papers clutched to my chest. I sat in my car and searched for lawyers. I skipped the ones with billboards on the highway. I skipped the ones who promised to fight for you in screaming letters. I found a website for a firm called Matthews Sterling. It was a plain blue page, probate, real estate, civil litigation, no photos of bulldogs, no slogans. I called. They had an opening at 4 o'clock. Mr. Sterling was a man in his 50s with a receding hairline and a calm, deliberate manner. His office smelled of old paper and lemon polish. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. He looked at the notice of default. He looked at the PDF of the signature. He didn't gasp. He didn't get angry. He just put on his glasses and leaned in. Ms. Bennett, he said, take a piece of paper and sign your name for me, 5 times. Fast. I did it. I pushed the paper across the desk. He compared them to the PDF. He looked at the pressure points, the loops, the slant. You didn't sign this, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. No, I said. I didn't. The slant is wrong, he said. This signature on the document leans slightly left at the end. Yours leans right, consistently, and the pen pressure is uniform on the forgery. Real signatures have variance in pressure. This was drawn, not written. He sat back. This is a forgery, and a bad one. But proving it in court requires a handwriting expert. And before we get there, we have a more immediate problem. The foreclosure clock is ticking. What do I do? I asked. I can't pay that money. We don't pay it, he said. We file a lawsuit. We file a lis pendens, a notice of pending legal action, against the property. That freezes the title. No one can buy it, sell it, or refinance it while the suit is active. It will stop the foreclosure sale dead in its tracks. Lenders hate litigation. They will pause everything until the court decides who actually owns the house. And Lydia? I asked. We serve her, he said. We sue her for quiet title, fraud, and partition. We blow the whole thing open. She will destroy me, I whispered. She has been telling people I am unstable for 5 years. Mr. Sterling looked at me. His eyes were kind but steel hard. Let her talk. We have documents. Documents don't care about rumors. Documents don't care about who cried at the funeral. We are going to shine a very bright light on that notary and this Apex company, and usually, when you turn on the lights, the roaches scatter. I retained him on the spot. It drained the last of my savings, but for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel helpless. I felt armed. I checked into a cheap motel. Not the Sleepy Pine this time, but a chain place near the highway. I didn't want to be anywhere near the memories of that first night. I was sitting on the bed, eating a vending machine sandwich, when my phone buzzed. It was Lydia. Mr. Sterling must have sent the demand letter via email immediately. He moved faster than I expected. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Then, I realized, I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid of this call. I answered. Hello, Lydia. Are you insane? Her voice was a shriek. It was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. A lawsuit? You are suing me? After everything I have done for this family? I am suing you because you forged my name, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. You took out a loan in my name, Lydia. You committed a felony. I did not forge anything, she yelled. You signed those papers. You just don't remember because you were probably medicated or drunk or whatever you are. I haven't been in this town in 3 years, I said. I was at work in Oak Creek on the day that document was notarized. I have timesheets. I have witnesses. I have toll booth records. There was a silence on the other end. A heavy breathing silence. You are trying to steal my house, she hissed. You are trying to ruin my life because you are jealous. You were always jealous. Mom and Dad trusted me. They gave it to me. They gave you a house, I said. They didn't give you permission to destroy my credit. I was going to pay it back, she screamed. I just needed time. The business is just hitting a rough patch. I was handling it. By taking out a third mortgage? I asked. Who are the partners? Lydia? Who are the people parking in the driveway? Shut up, she shouted. You don't know anything. You think I did this alone? You think it was easy keeping this floating? She stopped. The words hung in the air. You think I did this alone? Who helped you? Lydia? I asked softly. Go to hell, she said. If you proceed with this, Scarlett, I will bury you. I will make sure everyone knows you are a vindictive, greedy little... I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from adrenaline. She had slipped. You think I did this alone? She was scared. I looked around the motel room. I had brought only one bag, the same duffel I used for the gym, but in the trunk of my car, I had a plastic bin I had dragged around for 5 years. The bin Lydia had left on the porch. I had never really unpacked it. I had taken out the toiletries and the clothes, but the bottom was filled with the random detritus of that day. I went out to the car and hauled the bin into the room. I needed to feel close to the truth. I dumped it out on the bed. Old yearbooks, a stuffed bear, a photo album, and something else. A small, brass key ring. I picked it up. I remembered grabbing it from the hook by the back door on my way out of the house after the funeral. In that 5-minute window before Lydia had herded me into the side room, I had grabbed it instinctively, thinking it was the spare key to the shed. Or maybe the key to my old bicycle lock. I hadn't looked at it since. I held it under the lamp. There were 2 keys. One was a standard house key, useless now that the locks were changed, but the other was small, rectangular, flat. It had a number engraved on it, 402, and on the back, faint but legible, the letters FCB, First City Bank. My parents didn't bank at First City. They banked at the credit union. They had banked at the credit union for 40 years. I turned the key over in my fingers. 402. It was a safe deposit box key. My heart started to thud in my ears. Lydia had emptied the house. She had seized the accounts. She had cracked the safe in the study. But a safe deposit box at a bank they didn't normally use? If Lydia didn't know about the bank, she wouldn't have the key. And if she didn't have the key, she couldn't access the box. I looked at the number again. 402. I suddenly wondered if I'd been carrying the smoking gun in a plastic bin of stuffed animals for 5 years. I grabbed my phone and searched First City Bank locations. There was a branch downtown, 3 blocks from the courthouse. It opened at 9 a.m. I clutched the key in my fist until the metal bit into my palm. Lydia had said, "You think I did this alone?" Tomorrow, I was going to find out what my parents had done alone. And I had a feeling that whatever was in box 402 was going to change the definition of winning entirely. The lobby of First City Bank was silent, save for the rhythmic clicking of a teller's keyboard and the low hum of the air conditioning. It was a place of marble floors and brass railings, a relic of an era when money felt heavy and permanent. I stood at the counter, my hand sweating around the small brass key. "I need to access a safe deposit box," I said. "Number 402. The branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Higgins with silver hair and a pearl necklace, took the key and examined the number. She looked up at me over her glasses. Do you have the name on the account? She asked. It would be under Bennett, I said. Martha or Robert Bennett. She typed the name into her computer. She frowned, squinted at the screen, and then typed again. The box is listed under Martha Bennett, she said. But the account has been flagged as inactive for 5 years. We were actually preparing to escheat the contents to the state next month. My heart hammered against my ribs. 1 month. If I had waited 1 more month, the truth would have been auctioned off by the Unclaimed Property Division. I am her daughter, I said. Scarlett Bennett. Mrs. Higgins looked back at the screen. Well, that is fortunate, because you are listed as the secondary authorized deputy. You have full access rights. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I am? Yes, she said. Added 6 months before she passed. She came in herself to do it. I remember because she was very specific that no notification be sent to the home address. That detail landed like a punch. My mother, who told my father everything, who couldn't keep a Christmas present secret for more than a day, had come here alone to hide something. Mrs. Higgins led me into the vault. It was a massive steel room lined with hundreds of small metal doors. It smelled of cold metal and old paper. She used her master key in the top lock. I inserted mine in the bottom, and together we turned them. The door swung open. Mrs. Higgins slid out a long, narrow metal box and carried it to a small private viewing room. She set it on the table and left, closing the door behind her. I sat there for a moment, just staring at the gray metal lid. This was the time capsule. This was the voice from the grave. I lifted the lid. It wasn't full of cash. There were no diamonds or gold coins. It was paper. On top lay a white envelope with my name written in my mother's handwriting. Scarlett. The ink was slightly shaky, but the letters were formed with the care she always put into birthday cards. Underneath the letter was a flash drive, a simple black stick labeled with a strip of masking tape. On the tape, in my father's blocky all-caps printing, "For the girls." And below that, a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper. It was a handwritten inventory list, life insurance policy, pension account, but one line was circled twice in red ink. House paperwork. Do not trust anyone rushing you. I picked up the letter first. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost tore the flap. My dearest Scarlett, if you are reading this, then we are gone, and things have probably become complicated. I am writing this because I am worried. Your father is getting weaker, and I am not far behind him. We are trying to get our affairs in order, but there is so much noise. Lydia is anxious. You know how she gets. She panics when she feels like she is losing control. She has been pushing us to sign things, to simplify the estate. She says it is to protect us from taxes, to keep the house in the family. She brings people over, men in suits who talk fast and use big words. I don't like them. We love you both equally. Never doubt that. But we know Lydia has debts. We don't know how much, but we hear the phone calls she tries to hide. We fear that if she gets control of everything, she will use the house to fix her mistakes, and we fear she will push you out to do it. We have set up a plan. It is on the drive. We want the house to be a home for whoever needs it, or sold, and the money split. Fairly. Don't let her bully you. Scarlett, she is loud, but you are strong. You have always been the strong one, even if you don't know it. Love, Mom. I put the letter down. I was crying. Silent. Hot tears that dripped onto the table. You have always been the strong one. She knew. She saw the men in suits. She saw the pressure, and she was terrified. Not of death, but of what her death would unleash between her daughters. I picked up the flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop, which I had brought in my bag. There were 2 files. One was a folder of PDFs. The other was a video file. I clicked the video. My father appeared on the screen. He was sitting in his armchair in the den, wearing his favorite flannel shirt. He looked thin, his skin grayish, but his eyes were clear. He was holding the camera himself. The angle was slightly low. "Okay," he said. "Is it recording? Yes, red light is on. He took a breath. Girls, Lydia, Scarlett, if you are watching this, Mom and I aren't around to referee. Look, we tried to do this the right way. We met with Mr. Henderson last week. We drafted a transfer on death deed. It goes to the trust. The trust splits everything 50-50. The house is the big thing. We want you to have the option to buy each other out, but if you can't agree, it gets sold. No fighting, no one gets kicked out. He paused, looking off camera for a second, as if checking the door. Lydia, he said, his voice dropping. I know you are scared about the business. I know you think the house is the answer. It is not. Don't use this house to pay for that mess. And don't you dare cut your sister out. Scarlett, if the paperwork doesn't match what I'm saying right now, then something is wrong. We are signing the trust documents tomorrow. I am putting a copy on this drive. This is the real version. Don't let anyone tell you different. The video ended. I sat in the silence of the bank vault, feeling a cold rage crystallize in my chest. We are signing the trust documents tomorrow. I opened the PDF folder. There it was. Bennett Family Trust. Final draft. I scrolled through it. It was exactly as he said. 50-50 split. A specific clause about the house. Right of first refusal for either beneficiary. If declined, property to be sold and proceeds divided. And there were scans of the signature pages, signed, notarized by Mr. Henderson, the old family lawyer, dated 2 months before they died. I closed the laptop. I put everything back in the box except the flash drive and the letter. I put those in my bag. I walked out of the bank and into the bright sunlight of the downtown street. I felt like I was walking on a different planet. The world hadn't changed, but the gravity had shifted. I went straight to Mr. Sterling's office. I didn't have an appointment, but his receptionist took one look at my face and buzzed him immediately. I played the video for him. I showed him the PDFs. Mr. Sterling watched the video in silence. He watched it twice. Then he leaned back in his leather chair and took off his glasses. This changes the landscape, he said quietly. This is not just a dispute over a will. This is proof of intent, and it is proof that a valid estate plan existed before the one that was filed. The filed one, I said. The one Lydia showed me at the funeral. The one where she gets everything. If that one was signed after this trust, Mr. Sterling said, it technically supersedes it. That is how wills work. The last one wins. But look at the dates, I said. The trust was signed in May. The new will was signed in July, 3 days before they died, when Dad was in a coma. Mr. Sterling nodded. Exactly. We have established he was incapacitated, but now we have something stronger. We have the content of the new will. I pulled the court file this morning. He slid a document across the desk. It was a copy of the will Lydia had filed. Look at the witness names, he said. T. Miller and J. Kowalski. I saw those names, I said. On the notary log for the loan, too. T. Miller is Thomas Miller. Mr. Sterling said. He is the owner of Quick Seal Mobile Notary. J. Kowalski is Jason Kowalski. He is an employee of Apex Estate Services. The company Mrs. Gable warned me about, I said. Correct. Mr. Sterling said. Here's the kicker. In the will filed with the court, there is a reference to Schedule A, a list of assets, but Schedule A is missing from the court file. It is just gone. The judge signed off on it anyway because it was an expedited summary administration and no one objected. Because I didn't know, I said. But look at the trust documents you found, he said, tapping the laptop. They have a Schedule A, and it lists the house specifically. If we can prove that the new will was a rush job created by Apex to facilitate a theft, and that your father lacked capacity, the court will revert to the previous valid instrument, which is this trust. So we win? I asked. We have a very big gun, he said. But we need to tie the knot. I want to know who Thomas Miller is. I want to know why a mobile notary is witnessing wills for a fee. I will find him, I said. Scarlett, be careful. Mister, Sterling warned, these people are grifters. They don't like being cornered. I am not afraid of grifters, I said. I am afraid of losing the only thing my parents have left. I drove to the address, listed for Quick Seal Mobile Notary. It was exactly as I had pictured. A small storefront in a run-down strip mall, sandwiched between a payday loan center and a discount tobacco shop. The windows were plastered with neon signs. Notary, fingerprinting, title loans. I walked in. A bell chimed above the door. The air smelled of stale coffee and toner. Behind the counter sat a man in a polo shirt that was too tight across his stomach. He was scrolling on his phone. "Help you?" he grunted without looking up. "Are you Thomas Miller?" I asked. He looked up then. He had watery blue eyes and a nervous tick in his jaw. "Who is asking?" "My name is Scarlett Bennett," I said. "You notarized a will for Robert and Martha Bennett 5 years ago, and a deed of trust for a loan last October. With my signature on it." His face went pale. It was immediate. The blood just drained out of him. "I don't know what you are talking about," he said, his voice pitching up. "I do thousands of notarizations." "You came to the hospital," I said, bluffing. "We have the logs. You were there with Jason Kowalski from Apex." He stood up, knocking his phone off the counter. "Look, lady, I just verify ID. That is my job. If the ID is valid, I stamp. That is it." "You verified my ID last October?" I asked. "For the loan?" "Because I wasn't there." "The woman had a passport," he stammered. "It looked like you. She had the documents." "The woman," I said. "My sister, Lydia." I pulled out a photo of Lydia from my purse. I slammed it on the counter. "Is this her?" He looked at the photo. He looked at me. He was sweating now. I can't recall specific clients. Records are, we had a crash, computer crash, last month, lost everything." "A crash," I repeated. "How convenient." "Yeah," he said, backing away toward the rear door. "Bad luck. Look, you need to leave. I am busy." "You remembered her name," I said. "Before I even showed you the photo, I saw your eyes flicker. You know exactly who she is, because she is a repeat customer. She and Apex. You are the rubber stamp for their scam." "Get out," he shouted, "or I am calling the cops." "Go ahead," I said. "I would love to talk to the cops. I have a lawyer who is dying to subpoena your hard drive. Crashed or not." I turned and walked out. He didn't call the police. Of course he didn't. I sat in my car, shaking. He had confirmed it. The woman had a passport. Lydia had used my old expired passport, the one I had left in the desk drawer at the house, to impersonate me. She had walked into that dingy shop, pretended to be me, and signed my financial life away. And Apex. The name kept coming up. I spent the evening in my motel room, digging into Lydia's life online. I stopped looking at property records and started looking at business records. I found it. Lydia Bennett Logistics, LLC, formed 6 months before my parents died. It was a freight brokerage, a middleman business. She matched shippers with truckers. It was a high-risk, high-cash flow business. I looked at the reviews. They were brutal, non-payment, check bounced, fraud. I found a forum for independent truckers. There was a thread dedicated to her company. "Stay away from Bennett Logistics. She owes me $15,000 for a haul from Texas. Ghosted me. She pays with credit cards that get charged back. I heard she's borrowing from hard money lenders to float the float." Hard money lenders. That explained the partners. That explained the guys in suits and the guys in rusted trucks. Lydia wasn't running a consulting firm. She was running a Ponzi scheme of freight debt, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and using the family home as the ultimate collateral. The loans weren't for renovations. They were to pay off angry truckers and predatory lenders who were probably threatening to break her legs. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mr. Sterling. "We filed. Lis pendens is recorded. The foreclosure is paused. And we just served Lydia." I stared at the message. It was done. The war was official. I should have felt triumphant. I had the truth. I had the evidence. I had the law on my side. But I felt sick. I thought about the letter from my mother. She panics when she feels like she is losing control. Lydia hadn't done this because she hated me. She hadn't done it out of pure malice. She had done it because she was drowning. She had started a business she couldn't manage, gotten in over her head, and in her panic. She had looked at our dying parents and seen a life raft. She had convinced herself she was saving the family by taking control. She probably told herself that if she could just get the house, she could leverage it, fix the business, pay everyone back, and no one would ever know. She had rewritten the theft into a story of responsibility. I am the strong one. I am handling it. It was a breathtaking act of self-deception, but it was still theft, and it was still a betrayal that had left me grieving alone in a beige apartment for 5 years. I lay back on the motel bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling. Winning meant destroying her. If I pushed this all the way. Lydia wasn't just losing the house. She was going to prison, forgery, fraud, elder abuse. I closed my eyes. I could hear my father's voice from the video. Don't turn it ugly. It was already ugly. The question was, did I have the stomach to make it fatal? I hesitated, not because I doubted the truth. The truth was in black and white in the safe deposit box. I hesitated because I knew that once I pulled this trigger, the sister I had grown up with, the one who taught me to braid hair, the one who defended me from bullies in 3rd grade, would be gone forever. She would be replaced by a defendant, and I would be the prosecutor. I fell asleep with the key in my hand, dreaming of a house that no longer existed. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that surprised me. The hesitation was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Lydia had made her choice. She had made it 5 years ago in a funeral home. She had made it every time she signed my name. She had made it every time she ignored my texts. She had chosen the money over me. Now, I was choosing the truth over her. I got up, dressed in my best suit, and drove to Mr. Sterling's office. File the complaint for fraud, I said, and add a count for constructive trust. We are taking it all back. Mr. Sterling nodded, a grim smile on his face. I was hoping you would say that. The battle was joined, but the biggest revelation was yet to come, because even with the key, the video, and the notary, there was one piece of the puzzle I was missing. Lydia had said, "You think I did this alone?" I was about to find out that she wasn't just a perpetrator. She was a puppet, and the puppeteer was still pulling the strings. The war did not look like a battle. It looked like paper, boxes and boxes of it, stacked in the conference room of Mr. Sterling's office, smelling of dust and dry toner. We had entered the discovery phase, and what I found inside those boxes was not just evidence of fraud, but a heartbreaking map of my parents' final. Chaotic months. I spent days sitting on the floor, cross-legged, sifting through medical bills and bank statements. I saw the timeline of their decline plotted against the timeline of Lydia's desperation. It was quiet chaos. There were rushed appointments to specialists that I had never been told about. There were prescriptions filled at pharmacies across town, paid for with credit cards that were maxed out weeks later. And through it all, I saw Lydia's hand. She was everywhere. Her signature was on the intake forms as the primary emergency contact. Her handwriting was on the notes in the margins of the insurance denials. She had inserted herself as the helper, the dutiful daughter who was handling the burden. But as I cross-referenced the dates with my own phone logs, I realized she had been quietly isolating them. When I had called and she said, "Mom is resting, don't disturb her," the records showed they had been at a bank. When she told me, "Dad is just confused today," the records showed he had been signing a power of attorney update that gave her access to his checking account. She hadn't just stolen the house, she had stolen their last months of peace. But Lydia was not going down without a fight. As soon as the lawsuit was filed, the Whisper network in our hometown lit up. I didn't live there anymore, but the rumors traveled 200 miles to find me. A cousin sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post Lydia had made. It didn't name me, but it didn't have to. It is so sad when family members who were absent for years suddenly show up when there is money on the table. I took care of them when it was hard. Some people only care about the inheritance. The comments were a chorus of sympathy. You are a saint. Lydia, ignore the haters. Karma sees everything. It made my blood boil. I wanted to reply. I wanted to post the video of Dad. I wanted to post the foreclosure notice with my forged signature. I wanted to scream. I wasn't absent. I was pushed out. Don't, Mr. Sterling said when I showed him the post. She is trying to bait you. She wants an emotional reaction she can use in court. She wants to paint you as the unstable, greedy sister. If you engage, you validate the narrative. We fight with facts. Facts are boring, but they win. So I bit my tongue. I let the town think I was a villain. I let my self-respect take the hit, telling myself that the courtroom would be the only stage that mattered. Then, a crack appeared in her armor from an unexpected direction. Mr. Sterling had subpoenaed the records from the original estate planner. Mr. Henderson. He had retired 2 years ago, and his practice had been absorbed by a larger firm. We expected a standard document dump. Instead, we got a phone call from a woman named Karen. She had been Mr. Henderson's paralegal for 20 years. I remember your parents, Karen told me when we met in a coffee shop near the courthouse. She was a petite woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. They were lovely people, very organized. They came in specifically because they were worried about your sister. Worried how? I asked. They mentioned her business troubles, Karen said. Your father was adamant that the house needed to be protected. He used that word, protected. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photocopies of handwritten appointment notes. May 12th. Robert and Martha B. Meeting re. Trust. Client explicit. 50-50 split. Concern re. Lydia pressuring for deed transfer. Advised against. Client confirmed intent to keep title in trust. And then, at the bottom of the page, a note that made my throat tight. Copy of final draft to be mailed to daughter Scarlett in Oak Creek. Address provided. I never got it, I said. We sent it, Karen said. I mailed it myself, but we sent it to the parents' house first for final review before sending your copy. It looks like... She hesitated. It looks like the file copy for you was marked hand-delivered to parents. If your sister was intercepting the mail... She was, I said. Karen nodded. I am willing to testify to their intent, and to the fact that they seemed under duress regarding your sister's involvement. Your father asked me twice if the trust was ironclad. It was a small victory, but it mattered. We had a witness who wasn't family. Someone who could puncture Lydia's story that she was the benevolent caretaker. Back at the office, Mr. Sterling found something even bigger. He was reviewing the new will, the fraudulent one Lydia had filed, with a magnifying glass. Scarlett, look at this, he said, pointing to a clause on page 3. I leaned in. It was standard legal boilerplate. I give, devise, and bequeath all my property, real and personal, as listed in the attached Schedule A, to my daughter Lydia Bennett. Okay, I said. She gets everything listed in Schedule A. Right, Sterling said. But look at the court file. He opened the certified copy of the probate record. We flipped through every page. The will was there. The signature page was there. The notary page was there. But there was no Schedule A. It is missing, I said. It is not just missing, Sterling said, a slow smile spreading across his face. In probate law, if a will refers to an external document to define the assets, that document must be present and validated. Without Schedule A, the specific bequest fails. The will effectively gives her nothing listed. But the judge signed the order, I said. Because it was summary administration, Sterling said. It was rushed. The clerk probably checked for signatures and stamped it. But technically, this will is defective on its face. It references a list that doesn't exist. And here's the beautiful part. If the specific bequest fails, the assets fall into the residuary estate. And since the residuary clause in this fake will is also poorly drafted, it just refers back to said assets. The whole thing might collapse. And if it collapses? Then we revert to the prior valid instrument, Sterling said. The trust, the one with the 50-50 split. She made a mistake, I said. She made a sloppy mistake, Sterling corrected. Or more likely, the Apex guys made a mistake because they were churning out these documents like fast food. They forgot to attach the menu. The lever was in place. It was time to pull it. The court ordered mediation. It was a mandatory step before trial. A chance for the parties to settle. I dreaded it. I hadn't seen Lydia since the day she stood on the porch with the handyman. The mediation was held in a neutral conference room at the courthouse. It was a windowless room with a long oval table and uncomfortable chairs. Sterling sat next to me. Lydia arrived 10 minutes late. She walked in with a lawyer I didn't recognize. A young, flustered-looking man in a suit that was slightly too large. Lydia looked different. The polished, terrifyingly competent woman from the funeral was gone. In her place was someone who looked frayed. Her hair was pulled back, but strands were loose. Her face was gaunt. The lines around her mouth etched deep with stress. She wore a high-end blazer, but I noticed a missing button on the cuff. She sat opposite me. She didn't look me in the eye. She opened a binder and started shuffling papers, her movements jerky and aggressive. The mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Davis, cleared his throat. We are here to see if we can resolve the matter of the estate of Robert and Martha Bennett and the associated civil claims for fraud and quiet title. Who would like to begin? Lydia's lawyer started. He gave a rambling opening statement about Lydia's tireless devotion to our parents and the baseless accusations of a disgruntled sister. Then Mr. Sterling spoke. He was calm, precise, and devastating. We are not here to debate devotion, he said. We are here to discuss a forged deed of trust, a defective will, and a pattern of financial elder abuse. We are here to discuss the fact that Lydia Bennett has encumbered the estate with over $100,000 in debt using her sister's forged signature. Lydia's head snapped up. That is a lie, she spat. The business is paying those loans. I am servicing the debt. You are in default, Ms. Bennett, Sterling said. The foreclosure notice says otherwise. I was restructuring, Lydia said. It is a cash flow issue, temporary. Lydia, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. Her eyes locked onto mine. They were full of hate, but behind the hate, I saw panic. We know about the safe deposit box, I said. Her expression flickered. It was microsecond, but I saw it. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Her mouth opened slightly, then clamped shut. It was the look of someone who realizes they missed a spot while cleaning up a crime scene. What safe deposit box? She said. Her voice was too high. Mom and Dad didn't have a safe deposit box. I inventoried everything. Not everything, I said. Box 402 at First City Bank, the bank you didn't know about. I have the key. Lydia, I have the letter Mom wrote. I have the video Dad made. That is impossible, she whispered. I went through every file. I went through every drawer. You missed the key ring, I said. The one I took by accident. You were so busy changing the locks on the house. You forgot to check what I walked out with. She went pale. She leaned back in her chair, her hands gripping the edge of the table. It doesn't matter, she said, rallying. A video isn't a will. The court has already ruled. The court ruled on a defective document, Sterling said. A document with a missing schedule. And we have proof of the parents' true intent. But more importantly, Lydia. We have the notary. Lydia's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to her. She shook her head violently. I took the house because they wanted stability, she shouted, ignoring her lawyer. They knew you couldn't handle it. Scarlett, you were always off in your own world. I was there. I was driving them to chemo. I was picking up the prescriptions. I earned that house. You stole it, I said quietly. I saved it, she screamed. They were going to lose it. Their medical bills were piling up. They didn't have the cash. I stepped in. I handled their mail. I paid their bills. I kept the lights on. You handled their mail, I repeated. Yes, someone had to. So you saw the bank statements, I said. You saw the appointment reminders from Mr. Henderson. You saw the trust documents that were mailed to the house. She stopped. She realized what she had admitted. By admitting she handled the mail, she admitted she had access to the very documents she claimed didn't exist. She admitted she had the opportunity to intercept the truth. Handling mail means handling control, I said. You buried the trust. Lydia, you hid it. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. The business was, I needed leverage. Just for a little while. I was going to pay it back. I was going to fix it all before anyone knew. But you didn't fix it, I said. You broke it, and you broke us. The mediator intervened then. Sensing the tension was about to boil over, he called for a break. During the recess, Mr. Sterling pulled a folder from his briefcase. I wasn't going to play this card until trial, he said, but I think she is on the ropes. Let's finish it. He opened the folder. Inside were 3 high-resolution photographs. They were stills from a security camera. After my visit to the notary, Mr. Sterling had hired a private investigator. The investigator hadn't bothered with the nervous man behind the counter. He had gone to the landlord of the strip mall. He had subpoenaed the security footage for the common area outside the shops. The timestamp was October 14th of last year, 2:15 p.m. The first photo showed Lydia walking toward the Quick Seal storefront. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses. Walking next to her was a woman. She had dark hair like mine. She was about my height, but she wasn't me. The second photo showed them entering the shop. The third photo was the money shot. It was taken through the plate glass window of the shop. The angle was steep, but clear enough. It showed the counter, it showed the notary, Thomas Miller, stamping a document, and it showed the mystery woman signing a book. Lydia was standing right next to her, pointing at the paper. I looked at the woman in the photo. She looked vaguely familiar. I squinted. Is that? I started. We think it is one of her former employees, Sterling said. A dispatcher named Kelly. We are tracking her down now. We went back into the room. Mr. Sterling slid the photos across the table. We know it wasn't Scarlett, Sterling said. And now we know who it was, if we go to trial. Lydia, we aren't just suing you. We are handing these photos to the district attorney. This is identity theft. This is conspiracy. This is 5 to 10 years in a state penitentiary. Lydia looked at the photos. She didn't scream this time. She didn't deny it. She just deflated. It was physical. Her shoulders slumped. Her face went slack, and she looked, for the first time, like a frightened child. Her lawyer looked at the photos, then at Lydia. He closed his binder. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Can we have a moment? He asked. We waited in the hallway. I leaned against the wall, feeling a wave of exhaustion crash over me. My hands were shaking. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. That was my sister in those grainy black and white photos. My sister, committing a crime in a strip mall. 10 minutes later, the lawyer came out. We have an offer, he said. We went back in. Lydia wouldn't look at me. She was staring at her hands. My client is prepared to offer a settlement, the lawyer said. She will acknowledge the debt is hers alone. She will agree to indemnify Scarlett Bennett from all liability, and she offers $20,000 to cover your legal fees and inconvenience. 20,000? Sterling laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. The equity in the house is over 300,000. The debt she racked up is over 100,000, and you offer 20? And, Lydia said, speaking up suddenly, her voice was brittle. And you can visit. I stared at her. What? You can visit the house, she said, looking up at me with a strange, desperate defiance. I will grant you access. 2 weekends a month. You can come stay. You can see the old room. We can have holidays there, like a family. I looked at her, and I realized she still didn't get it. She thought she still held the power. She thought she was the queen of the castle, graciously granting the peasant permission to enter the gates. She was offering me visitation rights to my own heritage. It was an insult so profound it took my breath away. You think this is about visiting? I asked. Lydia, you forged my signature. You stole my credit. You erased our parents' wishes. And you think you can buy me off with 2 weekends a month? I am trying to be generous, she snapped, her old arrogance flashing through the fear. I am trying to keep the house in the family. If you force a sale, strangers will live there. Do you want that? Do you want strangers sleeping in Mom and Dad's room? Better strangers than a thief, I said. The room went silent. We reject the offer. Mister, Sterling said, we want full partition. We want the house sold. We want the proceeds used to pay off the legitimate debts, and the remaining equity divided according to the trust, 50-50, and we want Lydia's share garnished to pay for the fraud. No, Lydia stood up. I won't let you sell it. It is mine. Then we will see you in court next week, Sterling said. He began packing his briefcase. Lydia looked at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading now. Scarlett, please, don't do this. It will ruin me. If the house is sold, the business collapses. I leveraged everything. If I lose the house, I go bankrupt. I lose my apartment. I lose my car. I lose everything. You should have thought of that before you picked up the pen, I said. I walked out. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot for a long time. My heart was torn in two. Part of me wanted to burn it all down. Scorched earth. She deserved it. She had been cruel. She had been calculating. She had left me to rot in a cheap motel while she played Lady of the Manor. But another part of me heard my father's voice. Don't let anger turn you into someone you don't recognize. If I destroyed her completely, if I sent her to prison, if I left her homeless, would I be winning? Or would I just be the other half of a tragedy? I didn't want to be like her. I didn't want to use power to crush family. But I couldn't let her keep the house. That was the line. The house was the symbol of her theft. As long as she had it, she would never believe she did anything wrong. She would always tell herself she saved it. I chose strategy. We would force the sale. I wouldn't push for jail time, not yet. But I would take the house. It was the only way to break the delusion. I went back to my hotel, a nicer one this time, paid for with a credit card I finally wasn't afraid to use. I ordered room service. I tried to watch TV. At 10 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. But lying on the carpet, right in front of my door, was a plain white envelope. No postage, no return address, just my name, typed. I picked it up. I looked down the hall. Nothing but the patterned carpet and the vending machine humming in the distance. I went inside and locked the door. I opened the envelope. It contained a single page. It was a photocopy of an old life insurance beneficiary form. It was for my father's policy. A policy worth $500,000. The form was dated 6 months before he died. Primary beneficiary, Martha Bennett. Contingent beneficiaries, Scarlett Bennett, 50%. Lydia Bennett, 50%. But there was a handwritten note in the margin, initialed by an agent. Change request, dated July 10th. Change contingent, to Lydia Bennett, 100%. Status, rejected, due to missing signature of spouse. July 10th, 2 days before the new will, 2 days before the coma. Someone had tried to change the insurance policy to cut me out entirely, but they had failed because they forgot my mother's signature. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was the agent code at the bottom of the form. Agent J. Kowalski, Jason Kowalski, the man from Apex Estate Services, the witness on the fake will. He wasn't just a witness, he was the insurance agent. I turned the page over. There was a sticky note attached to the back. She didn't find Apex. Apex found her. Check the referral source. I stared at the note. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. Lydia had been in financial trouble, but she was a logistics manager, not an estate criminal. She didn't know how to forge wills or navigate probate loopholes. She didn't know how to set up complex deed transfers. Someone had taught her. Someone had groomed her. Apex found her. I remembered Mrs. Gable saying, "They target families in crisis." Lydia was the target. She was the perfect mark. Desperate, indebted, and morally flexible. Apex had swooped in, promised her a way out, handed her the documents, provided the notaries, and coached her on how to steal the house. And in exchange, I thought about the fees, the service charges, the loans from partners. They weren't just helping her steal the house, they were bleeding her dry while she did it. Lydia thought she was the master of the house, but she was just a tenant in a scam run by Jason Kowalski. I looked at the anonymous note again. Who sent this? Was it the notary, terrified of prison? Was it the mystery woman in the photo? Or was it Lydia herself, in a moment of drunken clarity, trying to show me that she was a victim too? It didn't matter who sent it. What mattered was the question it posed. Who was really winning here? It wasn't me, and it certainly wasn't Lydia. The real winner was the man in the cheap suit who had turned two sisters into enemies so he could profit off the wreckage. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Sterling. It was 11 at night. "I am sorry to wake you," I said, "but we need to amend the complaint." "What is it?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. "We aren't just suing Lydia," I said. "We are going after Apex, and I think I know how to bring them down." "Scarlett," he warned, "these are dangerous people." "I know," I said, "but they made a mistake. They bet on the wrong sister." The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was smaller than I expected, just a wood-paneled box where lives were dismantled and reassembled by strangers. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Mr. Sterling, keeping my hands folded on my lap to hide the tremor in my fingers. I had spent 5 years dreading this moment. I had imagined it would feel like an execution, with me begging for my life. But as the bailiff called the case, Bennett versus Bennett, I realized something important. I wasn't begging anymore. I wasn't the crying sister on the porch or the confused woman in the motel room. I was the person holding the pen. The first hour was a blur of exhibits. Mr. Sterling was methodical. He didn't scream. He built a wall, brick by brick. Exhibit A, the new will filed by Lydia. Exhibit B, the timeline of our parents' medical decline. Exhibit C, the financial records of Lydia Bennett Logistics, LLC. It was humiliating to hear our family's private tragedy read aloud into the record. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, flipped through the medical records. She read about my father's coma, my mother's confusion, and the specific cocktail of painkillers they were on during their final week. Lydia sat at the defense table. She was wearing a navy blue suit that looked expensive but slightly ill-fitting, as if she had lost weight rapidly. She kept whispering to her lawyer, shaking her head every time Mr. Sterling made a point. "Your Honor," Mr. Sterling said, standing up, "we would like to draw the court's attention to a critical defect in the probate filing. The will submitted by the defendant references a Schedule A for the distribution of assets. However, no Schedule A exists in the court file." The judge frowned. She flipped through the file. "I see a reference to it on page 3, but you are correct. It is not attached. Without that schedule," Sterling continued, "the specific bequest of the real property fails, and if the bequest fails, we must look to the prior valid instrument, which brings us to Exhibit D." He held up the flash drive and the authenticated printouts from the safe deposit box. "This is the Bennett Family Trust," Sterling said, "drafted 2 months prior, signed, notarized by a reputable attorney, and it clearly states the parents' intent, equal division, 50-50. Lydia's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. That trust was revoked by the later will." "A later will that is defective," Sterling shot back, "and which we allege was procured by fraud and undue influence. He put the quick seal notary photos on the overhead projector. The room went quiet. The grainy black and white image of Lydia standing next to the mystery woman at the notary counter loomed large on the screen. "This photo was taken on October 14th of last year," Sterling said. "The date the plaintiff, Scarlett Bennett, allegedly signed a deed of trust for a loan of $120,000 against the property. Ms. Bennett was at work in Oak Creek, 200 miles away. We have her timesheets. We have toll booth records." He pointed to the screen. "That is not Scarlett Bennett. That is an imposter. And standing right next to her, directing the transaction, is the defendant." Lydia didn't look at the screen. She stared at the table, her face pale and rigid. "We call the defendant to the stand," Sterling said. Lydia walked to the witness stand. She looked composed, but I could see the tension in her jaw. She swore to tell the truth. "Ms. Bennett," Sterling began, "you have stated that you handled your parents' mail in their final months. Is that correct?" "Yes," Lydia said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. "I was helping them. They were overwhelmed." "Did you ever see a draft of the family trust sent from Mr. Henderson's office?" "No," Lydia said. "They never mentioned a trust." "Did you see a letter addressed to your sister, Scarlett, from that same office?" "No." "Miss Bennett," Sterling said, picking up a piece of paper, "we have a sworn affidavit from Mr. Henderson's paralegal stating she mailed that draft to your parents' home with instructions to hand-deliver a copy to Scarlett. You were the only person checking the mail. Are you saying it got lost?" "Mail gets lost all the time," Lydia said, shrugging. "Or maybe Dad threw it out. He was confused." "Confused," Sterling repeated. "Yet 3 days before he died, while in the ICU, he was apparently clear-headed enough to sign a complicated new will that gave you everything." "He had lucid moments," Lydia said. "He wanted me to have the house. He knew I would take care of it." "Take care of it?" Sterling asked. "By taking out 3 high-interest loans against the equity in 4 years?" Lydia bristled. "Those were business loans, to support the family legacy. The house needed repairs." "Repairs?" Sterling held up the bank statement. "This shows a transfer of $40,000 to a Horizon Capital. That is a debt consolidation firm, isn't it? For your trucking business?" "It is all connected," Lydia snapped. "My business supports the house." "And the signature on the deed of trust?" Sterling asked. "The one from October. Is that your sister's signature?" Lydia hesitated. She looked at the judge, then back at Sterling. "It looks like hers," she said. "Did you see her sign it?" "I wasn't watching every second." "Ms. Bennett," Sterling said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We have the photo. You are standing right there. Who is the woman in the wig?" "I don't know who that is," Lydia said quickly. "I meet a lot of people." "You don't know the woman standing 12 inches away from you?" Sterling asked. "The woman helping you commit a felony?" "I didn't commit a felony," Lydia shouted. "I was trying to save the house. You don't understand. The lenders were calling. They were going to foreclose if I didn't get the refinancing. I had to do something." "So you hired an imposter?" "I authorized an agent," Lydia stammered. "I thought it was legal. They told me it was a standard power of attorney proxy." "Who told you that?" Sterling asked. Lydia froze. She looked at her lawyer. He was staring at his shoes. "The consultants," she whispered. "No further questions." Sterling said. Lydia stepped down. She looked shaken. The mask of competence had slipped, revealing the frantic, drowning woman underneath. Then, the doors opened for our final witness. "The plaintiff calls Karen Miller," Sterling announced. Karen walked in. She looked exactly as she had in the coffee shop. Sensible, sharp, and unimpressed by the drama. She took the stand. "Ms. Miller," Sterling said, "did you recognize the documents found in the safe deposit box?" "I did," Karen said. "I drafted them myself. The Bennett Family Trust, signed May 12th. "And what was the parents' intent regarding the house?" "They were very clear," Karen said, her voice carrying to the back of the room. They wanted it split 50-50, or sold. They were specifically concerned about Lydia Bennett having sole control. Mr. Bennett told me. Lydia is in trouble, and if we give her the deed, she will eat the equity alive. The judge looked up from her notes. She looked at Lydia. It was a look of profound disappointment. And did you mail a copy to Scarlett Bennett? Sterling asked. I did, Karen said. To the parents' address. To be forwarded. I put it in the mailbox myself. Thank you, Sterling said. The judge cleared her throat. She looked at Lydia's lawyer. Counsel, she said, this court is looking at a pattern of behavior that goes well beyond a probate dispute. We have missing documents. We have conflicting testimony regarding mail. We have photographic evidence of what appears to be identity theft. And we have a witness confirming the parents explicitly feared exactly what has happened. Lydia's lawyer stood up. He looked pale. Your Honor, he said, my client asserts that she was acting under professional advice. She engaged a firm to assist with the estate administration. What firm? The judge asked. The lawyer hesitated. He looked at Lydia. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Apex Estate Services, the lawyer said. And a specific consultant named Jason Kowalski. The name hung in the air. Sterling leaned over to me. There it is, he whispered. The other shoe. Mr. Kowalski prepared the will, the lawyer continued. He provided the witnesses. He handled the filing. He advised my client that the trust was invalid and that she needed to secure the property to prevent loss to the state. He also facilitated the loans. Facilitated? The judge asked. Or arranged? He connected her with the lenders, the lawyer said. And he provided the notary services. The judge leaned back. Her face hardened. So your defense, she said, is that your client conspired with a predatory service to defraud her sister in the court because she was advised it was standard procedure? She was under duress, the lawyer said weakly. She believed she was protecting the asset. She was protecting herself, the judge said. The gavel didn't come down yet, but the energy in the room had shifted tectonically. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. It was a crime scene. Lydia looked small. She wasn't the powerful older sister who had ordered me off the porch. She was a woman who had gotten into a car with a stranger because he promised to drive her to safety, only to realize too late that he was driving her off a cliff. I looked at her, and I felt that strange emotion again. Clarity. Lydia was a perpetrator. She had signed the papers. She had lied to my face. She had evicted me, but she was also a pawn. Apex Estate Services, Jason Kowalski, had seen her coming a mile away. They had seen a woman with a failing business and dying parents, and they had handed her a loaded gun, telling her it was a magic wand. They had used her greed and her fear to strip the equity out of the house, taking their cut at every step. Loan fees, notary fees, consulting fees. They had eaten the house from the inside out, using Lydia as the fork. The judge issued her preliminary ruling from the bench. I am issuing an immediate injunction freezing all assets related to the estate of Robert and Martha Bennett, she said. The foreclosure action is stayed pending a full fraud investigation. I am referring the matter of the notarizations and the loan documents to the district attorney's office for review. She looked at Lydia. Ms. Bennett, you are ordered to surrender all keys and access codes to the property to the court-appointed administrator immediately. You are removed as executor. A forensic accountant will be appointed to trace the loan proceeds. If it is found that you used estate assets for personal business debts, you will be held personally liable for restitution. Lydia put her head in her hands. This hearing is adjourned, the judge said. And counsel, she added, looking at Lydia's lawyer. I want to see everything you have on Apex Estate Services. If they are practicing law without a license in my county, I want to know about it. The gavel banged. It was over. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but steady. Mister? Sterling shook my hand. We got it, he said. The house is frozen. We will force the sale. You will get your share of whatever is left after the lenders are dealt with. Thank you, I said. for believing me." "The evidence believed you," he said. "I just organized it." I walked out of the courtroom and into the bright, harsh hallway. I needed air. I walked down the marble steps and out onto the plaza. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the concrete. I took a deep breath, tasting the exhaust and the cooling air. "Scarlett?" I turned. Lydia was standing by the door. Her lawyer had already left. She was alone. She looked older than her 38 years. The sunlight caught the gray in her hair that she usually dyed over. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I didn't say anything. I just waited. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. It was such a weak sentence. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was the anthem of people who light fires they can't control. "You forged my signature." "Lydia," I said. "You let me think I was crazy for 5 years. You let me think Mom and Dad didn't love me." "I know," she said. She looked down at her shoes. "I know." She took a step closer, then stopped when she saw me stiffen. "They told me you would take everything," she said. "Who?" I asked. "Apex?" She nodded. "Kowalski. He came to me right after the diagnosis. He said, 'Your sister lives in the city. She doesn't care about the legacy. She is going to force a sale the minute they die, and you will be left with nothing.' He said the only way to save the house, to save the business, was to move fast. He said it was what Dad would have wanted. He made it sound so logical." I listened to her, and I heard the braided truth. It was a confession. Yes, but it was also an excuse. She was still trying to offload the blame. "He made me do it. He tricked me." "You could have called me," I said. "You could have asked me. I would have helped you. Lydia, I would have helped you save the business. We could have figured it out." "I was ashamed," she whispered. "I couldn't let you know I was failing. I was always the big sister. I was supposed to be the successful one." That was the core of it. Pride. Her pride was so brittle that she burned down our family to protect it. She would rather be a criminal than a failure in my eyes. "Well," I said, "now you are both." She flinched. Tears spilled over her cheeks. "What happens now?" she asked. "Are you going to press charges? For the loan?" I looked at her. I saw the sister who had taught me how to ride a bike. I saw the sister who had held my hand at our grandmother's funeral. And I saw the stranger who had looked me in the eye and lied about a safe deposit box. I had the power now. I could push for prison. I could ensure she never worked in logistics again. I could scorch the earth until nothing grew. But I remembered the letter. She panics when she feels like she is losing control. "I want the house sold," I said. "I want the lenders paid off so my name is clear. I want my half of whatever is left." "And the charges?" she asked, her voice trembling. "If you cooperate against Apex," I said. "If you give the DA everything, every email, every text, every meeting note with Kowalski, I won't push for jail time. I will tell them I am satisfied with restitution." Relief washed over her face, so intense she almost collapsed. I will give them everything. I hate him. I hate what he made me do." "He didn't make you do it." "Lydia," I said sharply. "He just handed you the pen. You chose to write." I turned to walk away. "Scarlett?" she called out. I paused. "Can we—" she started, then stopped. "Will we ever—" "Don't," I said. "Just fix the mess. That is all there is right now." I walked to my car. I didn't look back. I drove out of the city as the streetlights flickered on. The radio was off. I needed the silence. I had won. The house would be sold. My credit would be restored. The truth was on the record. But as I merged onto the highway, heading back toward Oak Creek, I didn't feel like a victor. I felt heavy. I had regained my history, but I had lost my sister. The house was just wood and siding. The family was the real casualty. I thought about the key in my pocket, the key to box 402. It had unlocked the truth, but it hadn't fixed the past. It had just shown me exactly how broken it was. Winning didn't mean getting everything back. It just meant deciding what you were willing to walk away with. I was walking away with my name. I was walking away with my sanity. And for the first time in 5 years, when I thought about my parents, I didn't feel the sharp sting of betrayal. I felt a quiet, sad peace. They had tried. They had loved us. And in the end, their voice, preserved in a metal box, had been loud enough to save me. I rolled down the window and let the night air rush in. It smelled of rain and asphalt. It smelled like the future, uncertain, messy, but mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I believe the truth has a way of coming out. No matter how deep you bury it, I would love to know where you are listening from. Please leave a comment below with your country or city. It helps me feel a little less alone in all this. And if you want to hear more stories about people fighting back against the odds, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think I should have forgiven Lydia? Or did she get off too easy? I read every single one. Thank you for being here.